Okay, let's talk about science practice 3. Science practice 3 is using scientific methods, questioning, identifying experimental procedures, writing a scientific question, stating null and alternative hypotheses, identifying dependent and independent variables and controls, and being able to justify those controls. So all of your experimental design stuff. Okay. Now, when we talk about what task verbs are in here, there could be a lot of different ones. Okay, and let's just look at what we mean by task verbs to begin with. The College Board identifies task verbs used in free response questions on the AP exam, okay, and lists them all out, and then it tells you, what should you do if you see that word. So if you see identify, okay, then you're going to provide just that information without really elaborating on it. Okay, so just point it out. Okay, and that's a little bit different from explain, which is like a little bit more of giving information about why that happens. Okay, whereas determine up here sort of means something that you're going to figure out from a calculation. So let's go back and look at that science practice. Okay, so we're looking at posing a question, stating null hypotheses, okay, propose what the next investigation should be. And if we look at a question from a previous exam, this is from the 2017 exam, and it was a question about the effect of caffeine on memory in bees. Okay, so what they did was they gave the bees nectar sources, and some had caffeine and some did not. Okay, and then they tested their probability of revisiting that source 10 minutes and 24 hours later. They give you a little bit of data. Okay, but then if you come down here, it says design an experiment using artificial flowers to investigate potential negative effects of increasing caffeine concentration in the nectar on the number of floral visits by bees. Okay, so what's the independent variable, the thing I control? I'm going to control how much caffeine there is in the nectar. And the thing that we measure, or the dependent variable, will be how many times do those bees visit those flowers. Okay, so what we're being asked to do, our task verb here is identify. So just point it out. The null hypothesis, an appropriate control, and the predicted result. Okay, just identify. So what do we end up coming up with here? We have a null hypothesis that increasing caffeine concentration has no effect. Okay, or the bees will go to flowers no matter how much caffeine they have in them. All right, and your control is going to be your flowers that don't have any caffeine in them. Okay, and then it says a predicted result that could be used to reject the null hypothesis. If our null hypothesis is the caffeine has no effect, then our predicted result to reject that would be, well, the bees definitely go to the flowers with more caffeine more often. Okay, or the bees go to the flowers with no caffeine more often. Okay, or the number of floral visits by bees is different at different concentrations of caffeine. All right, so it's just showing some selection by the bees of the amount of caffeine in those flowers. Okay, and again, we didn't have to justify our control or justify any of this. We're simply using identify, okay, the task verb identify. All right, and I do really think that science Science practice 3 is definitely going to be a big part of one of these questions because it's not a thing you'll be able to Google or find in your notes. They can just ask you about some sort of scientific setup or perhaps make you make the setup. So make sure you're clear about your different types of hypotheses, your different types of variables, and things like that.